The streets of Lagos had never felt quieter. Not even the honking of cars or the chatter of market vendors could break the strange emptiness that followed him. Michael Adwale walked with his hands deep in his pockets, eyes tracing the familiar skyline of tall office buildings. Neon signs flickering like half-forgotten promises. Normally, the city thrived in its chaos, but tonight, it felt like it had paused just to watch him stumble. It wasn't the rain, though, the drizzle streaking. Across his jacket added a cold bite. It wasn't even the buzzing streetlights. It was the absence of her laughter, the sudden emptiness where Amara's presence had been. She had walked out. That thought hit him again, harder this time. She had walked out, and I didn't even notice until it was too late. Michael had always been ambitious. A rising star in his tech company, a man who measured life in board meetings, client wins, and weekend brunches with friends. But Amara had been his tether. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was his compass, the quiet voice that reminded him there was more to life than emails and PowerPoints. And he had ignored it all. A flashback hit him. 6 months ago, they had sat in their favorite cafe, Nia's Corner, the smell of roasted coffee beans filling the air. And she had stared at him across the table, her eyes sharp, unwavering. "Michael, you're here." "But you're never here," she said softly. Stirring her cappuccino in circles, he had chuckled nervously, deflecting work's just been. "A lot. You know how it is. But you promised," she had said, voice cracking, "that we'd make time, that we'd be us." He remembered shrugging, thinking the conversation would end there, thinking she would wait because she always had. But tonight, walking past street vendors selling fried plantains and roasted corn, he felt the weight of that moment. She hadn't waited. She had left. The truth hit him like a sudden downpour. In his pursuit of success, he had lost the one person who had seen him as more than titles and achievements. He had taken her for granted, assuming love would be patient. Love was patient, yes, but people weren't. Michael's phone buzzed. A message from his best friend. "Tay, you good, bro? Heard about Amara?" He stared at it, fingers trembling. Typing a reply felt impossible. How could he explain that it wasn't a fight? Not really. That there had been no betrayal, no shouting, no dramatic scene, just neglect, a subtle erosion of connection until one day, she decided enough was enough. He walked faster. Past the buzzing street market, past the neon-lit corners of Lagos's nightlife, and everything reminded him of her. The jollof rice they shared at Mama Funk's kitchen last week, the way she always hummed while she cooked, the small, tender moments he had taken for granted. Another flashback, her hands brushing his as they cooked together, laughing at his clumsy chopping of onions. He remembered thinking, "I'll always have her. She's mine." But she wasn't. She had her own life, her own boundaries. And he had ignored them. A sharp gust of wind tore through the street, and Michael pulled his jacket tighter around himself. He felt exposed, naked in his regret. He had chased everything else: money, recognition, status, but had he ever chased himself? The thought hit him like a fist. Maybe losing her was the only way. He could finally start looking inward. He stopped at the bridge overlooking the lagoon. The water reflected the scattered city lights, shimmering in waves, fragmented like his own life. Memories of their first date, walking along the same bridge under a full moon, laughing at nothing and everything at once, swirled in his mind. And then the image of her walking away, her bag over her shoulder. Her steps, calm but firm, came crashing back. Michael sank onto the edge of the railing. His heart ached in ways he had never known. Anger, guilt, love, regret, they all collided. The city around him was alive, vibrant, but inside he felt deadened. Hollowed out by the truth he hadn't faced until now. He had lost her. And in losing her, he realized he had also lost a part of himself. Somewhere in the chaos of Lagos streets, he whispered to no one in particular, "I don't know how to fix this, but maybe I have to fix me first." And that was the beginning. Not of winning her back, not yet, but the beginning of a journey Michael didn't know he was ready for. A journey that would take him deep into his own fears, mistakes, and heartaches. forcing him to find himself in a world that had been moving too fast for him to notice what truly mattered. The next morning, Lagos woke in full swing. Horns blared, motorbikes weaved through traffic, and the scent of grilled suya mingled with the humid air. But for Michael, the city had lost its pulse. Every corner, every street stall, every familiar sound reminded him of her absence. He sat at his office desk, the glow of his laptop illuminating the empty cubicle. His coworkers passed by with quick smiles, casual nods, unaware that Michael's world had collapsed the night before. Emails stacked up, calls went unanswered, but he couldn't focus. Every ding, every notification, pulled him back to the memory of her walking away. He remembered the night before the way her silhouette had disappeared into the neon haze of the city, leaving a silence he couldn't escape. Even now, he could see her perfectly, the curve of her shoulder, the gentle sway of her walk, the determination in her eyes. It wasn't a dramatic fight, no shouting, no slamming doors. Just a calm, resolute decision to leave. And he had been too blind, too wrapped up in himself to see it coming. A knock at his office door snapped him out of his thoughts. It was Tay, his oldest friend, the one who had always known how to cut through Michael's stubborn pride. "Bro, you've been sitting here for hours. Are you even breathing?" Tay said, leaning against the doorframe. Michael forced a smile, but it faltered. "I'm fine," he muttered. Ty didn't buy it. He pushed open the door and slid into the seat across from him. "Fine. You look like a man who just lost the city," he said, half joking, half serious. "Talk to me." Michael hesitated, fingers drumming on the desk. Pride had always been his shield, the reason he rarely admitted weakness. But Tay's presence demanded honesty. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready. I lost her, Tay," he admitted, voice low. "She left, and I don't know how to fix it." Tay leaned back, eyes steady. "You mean you lost yourself while she was still here? That's the part you're missing, bro." Michael felt the words sink in like stones. Tay had always been blunt, the kind of friend who said what needed to be said, even if it hurt. And it hurt, because it was true. He had been so focused on climbing, achieving, winning, that he had forgotten the simplest, most human part of life-love connection. Presence. He recalled the small things he had ignored. Her texts asking him to eat before working late. Her suggestion to take a weekend trip. Her jokes about how he always missed birthdays and anniversaries. Each memory was a tiny, stabbing reminder of his neglect. By lunchtime, Michael found himself wandering through the city streets. The market near his apartment buzzed with life hawkers calling out, children laughing, women bargaining over tomatoes and peppers, but he felt like an outsider. Untethered from the rhythm of the world, he stopped at a small food stall selling akara and bread, the aroma reminding him of breakfasts they had shared. Laughing over burnt eggs or spilled palm oil. He ordered mechanically, barely tasting it. Memories of Amara flooded back. Her insistence on sharing everything, even the simplest meals. As if love itself could be folded into a plate of fried dough. Michael's phone buzzed again. A message from her. "I hope you find what you're looking for." He stared at it, frozen. No anger, no pleading, just truth. And for the first time, he realized that the love he had taken for granted had boundaries. That it had expectations he had failed to meet. And yet, somewhere deep inside, he wanted to argue, to beg her to return. But he didn't. He knew the words would be hollow unless he truly changed. As he walked past the lagoon that evening, the city lights reflecting on the water, he felt a strange mixture of despair and clarity. Losing Amara had hurt more than he ever imagined, but perhaps it was the pain that would guide him. The thought was frightening. To confront himself. To dig into the parts of him he had ignored. To face failures he had hidden beneath ambition. A memory surfaced her saying, "Months ago, Michael, if you can't love yourself, you can't love anyone else." At the time, he had brushed it off. Now it felt like a prophecy. Her departure wasn't just a loss, it was a challenge. A call to examine the man he had become. That night, Michael sat by his apartment window, watching Lagos hum with life below. The neon signs flickered like distant stars. The laughter from street corners echoed faintly, and somewhere deep in him, a seed had been planted. He didn't know how long it would take, or where it would lead. But he knew this. He could no longer ignore the emptiness, the mistakes, the pride that had driven her away. And so, with the city alive but his heart quiet, Michael made the first promise to himself: I will find her again, not to take her back, but to prove to myself that I can be the man she deserved. And if I can't, then at least I will finally know who I am. The following week was a blur of faces, voices, and obligations that felt meaningless. Michael wandered through Lagos like a man caught between two worlds: the life he had built and the one he had ignored. Meetings blurred into lunch appointments, phone calls into voicemails, but none of it mattered. Not really. Not when every reflection in every glass door reminded him of her absence. Of the quiet spaces she once filled, he tried to fill the void the only way he knew: distraction. A new coffee shop opened in Lekki, and he went there daily, pretending to sip cappuccinos while scrolling through his emails. But the aroma of roasted beans and pastries reminded him of Amara humming as she baked banana bread on Sunday mornings. Every laugh, every gesture she had made, replayed in his mind like a relentless film reel. One evening, Tay pulled him into a basketball court in the heart of the city. The court was alive young men dribbling, sneakers squeaking. The air thick with the smell of sweat and roasted plantains from nearby street stalls. Tay tossed a ball at him. Stop hiding, bro, Tay said. You need a mirror, and right now, it's this court.
Michael
Hesitated. His pride resisted. But as he took the ball, felt its weight in his hands. He realized something. He had been avoiding life itself, avoiding confrontation with himself. Every pass he fumbled, every shot he missed, reminded him of all the small mistakes he had ignored with Amara that night. Drenched in sweat, Michael sat on the court steps. For the first time, he admitted a truth he had been avoiding. I don't even know who I am without her. He remembered another. Flashback Amara insisting he attend her friend's wedding with her. It's not about the event, she had said. It's about showing up. For me, for us, he had refused, caught up in a business dinner he deemed more important. The memory stung like fire. Determined to confront the emptiness, Michael began small experiments. He reached out to old friends he had neglected: Lake, his university roommate, who now ran a small graphic design firm, and Jide, his cousin, who had moved abroad and returned with a wealth of stories. Each meeting was awkward at first, full of silences and unspoken truths. But gradually he rediscovered laughter, connection, and the simple warmth of human presence. He also faced failures he had long avoided. Attempting to cook, he burned almost everything. Attempting to join a local poetry circle, his words stumbled, clumsy, and exposed. But in each failure, he felt something unfamiliar: growth. Each misstep chipped away at his pride, leaving him raw, vulnerable, and honest. One afternoon, while wandering through Balagan Market, he saw a young couple arguing over a trivial misunderstanding. He froze. The scene was a mirror, reflecting what he and Amara had endured. He noticed the tension in the man's shoulders, the frustration in his eyes, the exact same patterns he had repeated day after day until she left. Michael stopped mid-step, heart hammering. He understood for the first time that love was a living, breathing effort. It wasn't something you achieved or earned by success. Alone, it required presence, attention, and humility, and he had failed. Every missed call, every ignored message, every postponed date had been another brick in the wall between them. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the muted glow of city lights. He wrote in his journal a habit he had abandoned long ago. Each word bled honesty. I am lost. I am proud. I am terrified. But I will face it. I will find myself. The words felt heavy, but liberating. Like a first step into a room he had avoided his whole life. And then came the unexpected message. Not from her, but from someone he hadn't spoken to in years: Lake. Hey, I know things have been crazy. Want to catch up? It was small, almost mundane, but for Michael, it was a lifeline. For the first time, He felt the fragile pulse of life returning. He realized that finding himself wouldn't be instantaneous. It wouldn't be about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It would be incremental, messy, and painfully human. As he read the message, he smiled faintly. Somewhere deep in the city's pulse, in the hum of traffic and the laughter of children playing in the streets, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. He wasn't whole yet. He wasn't the man Amara had deserved. But for the first time in months, he was moving forward. And moving forward, he realized, was the first step toward truly finding himself. Asterisk, the streets of Lagos were alive with evening energy. Streetlights reflected off wet asphalt. Children played near open drains, and vendors called out for attention. Michael walked aimlessly, letting the city guide his steps, as if the rhythm of life outside could synchronize with the chaos inside him. But every face, every sound, seemed to whisper her name. He had begun to notice things he never had before. The subtle smiles of strangers, the way people greeted one another, the small kindnesses that passed unnoticed in his former self-absorbed routine. And yet, despite this awakening, a shadow lingered. The ghost of Amara. One night, Michael found himself at the rooftop bar of the Icon Plaza, a place he and Amara had visited only once. Memories came unbidden the way her fingers had traced the rim of her glass. The laugh she couldn't suppress even when someone had spilled wine on the floor. The warmth of her hand in his. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting the memories wash over him. A voice interrupted. "You're lost in thought," said a familiar tone. He turned, heart skipping. It was Zainab, a colleague, an old friend. Someone who had always been candid with him. "Yeah," he admitted, forcing a smile. "Just thinking," she studied him, eyes narrowing with quiet intuition. "About her." He flinched but nodded. "Every day," he said softly. "I can't stop replaying it. The arguments, the silences. I keep thinking maybe I could have done something differently." Zainab leaned against the railing. "You didn't just lose her because of one fight, Michael. You lost her because you stopped seeing yourself into him the same way. You forgot that love is active, not passive." Her words cut deep. Michael thought about all the subtle ways he had neglected Amara, the canceled dinners, the unreturned calls, the nights he spent at work while she waited. He had assumed love was endless, but it had limits. And she had set them. Flashbacks surged. He remembered the day she had given him the little keychain, a carved wooden heart. "Keep it," she said. "So you remember that love isn't forever unless we care for it every day." At the time he had laughed, distracted, oblivious. Now he felt the weight of that token pressing against his chest like an accusation, determined to confront his past. Michael returned to the places they had frequented together. The old bookstore in Victoria Island where she had spent hours picking out novels. The small street corner where they shared a cara and chilled soft drinks. Even the tiny art gallery where she had insisted he slow down and appreciate color. Everywhere he went, he found fragments of what he had lost, coasts of laughter, whispers of her voice, shadows of her presence. Each place forced him to face himself. He realized that the man he had been, the ambitious, proud, always in control, man wasn't enough. Not for Amara, not for himself. He had been chasing success while ignoring the parts of his life that made him human. Vulnerability, tenderness, empathy. One evening, while walking past their favorite cafe, he saw her, or rather, someone who reminded him of her. A young woman with a bright smile, carrying a stack of papers, laughter spilling over the street. Michael froze. His chest tightened. It wasn't Amara, but the resemblance was enough to bring tears to his eyes. He realized then that he had been searching for her not in her physical form but in the essence she had stirred in him, the courage to care, to feel, to confront himself. Michael's phone buzzed. A message from Tay. "Meet me tomorrow." Big surprise. Trust me, he didn't know what the surprise would be, but for the first time, he felt a spark of anticipation. It wasn't just about seeing Tate. It was about taking a step forward into the unknown. About risking failure and embarrassment in pursuit of growth. That night, lying in bed, Michael reflected. Losing Amara hadn't just hurt it, had exposed him. It had forced him to confront pride, regret, and fear. And in that confrontation, He realized something profound. The journey to find her again, if that was even possible, was secondary to the journey of finding himself. Without it, no reconciliation, no apology, no declaration of love could matter. He closed his eyes and whispered to the empty room, "I don't know where this path will take me, but I know I have to walk it." The city outside hummed, oblivious to the transformation happening in the apartment above. Michael knew that the next steps would be hard, uncomfortable, and humbling, but for the first time. He welcomed the challenge, because losing her had done more than break his heart. It had given him the mirror he had always avoided, and staring into that mirror, Michael realized the truth. If he could survive himself, if he could confront his flaws, then maybe, just maybe, he could be worthy of love again. The Lagos skyline glowed as the sun dipped behind high-rise buildings, bathing the streets in gold. Michael stood on his apartment balcony, watching the city breathe. For the first time in months, he felt restless, not in the chaotic, anxious way he used to, but in a way that hinted at possibility. Something inside him had shifted. It started small. He returned to Nia's Corner, the cafe where he and Amara had shared countless afternoons. The smell of roasted coffee and pastries greeted him, and memories surged like waves. But instead of being paralyzed by regret, he forced himself to sit, order a coffee, and simply exist in the moment. No calls, no emails, no distractions, just him and the quiet pulse of the city. Tay was there, as usual, with his half-joking, half-serious wisdom. "You're starting to look less like a ghost," he said, tossing a sugar packet across the table. Michael chuckled faintly. "I'm trying. Feels like everything I thought I knew about myself was wrong." Tay nodded knowingly. "You can't undo the past, bro. But you can learn from it. Start building yourself from the pieces left behind." And that's what Michael did. He started reaching out to people he had ignored, making amends where he could. He called Full Lake and apologized for years of neglect. He spent time with his younger cousins, teaching them things he had learned in the corporate world, listening to their dreams instead of offering unsolicited advice. He even visited his parents more often, appreciating the quiet stability they had always provided, but he had taken for granted. Each small action felt revolutionary. Each moment of attentiveness and presence reminded him that life wasn't just about accomplishments. It was about connection, empathy, and integrity. But growth came with pain. Michael had to face the harshest truth of all. He hadn't just lost Amara because of external circumstances. He had driven her away. He remembered a specific argument months ago, in the dimly lit kitchen of his apartment. "You don't hear me, Michael?" Amara had shouted, tears in her eyes. "It's not just about being busy. It's about being here. For me, for us, for the life we promised each other." He had laughed nervously, brushed it off, and returned to his laptop, thinking deadlines were more urgent than her feelings. That memory now burned like acid. Michael realized that love, trust, and loyalty weren't just abstract words. They were actions he had consistently failed to demonstrate. One evening, he decided to face a deeper, more personal challenge. He enrolled in a creative writing workshop at a local art studio, a place Amara had once encouraged him to explore. The first session was humbling. His sentences stumbled, his metaphors faltered, and he felt painfully exposed among strangers who seemed effortlessly talented. But he persisted, with every paragraph, every draft. He discovered fragments of himself he had ignored for years: sensitivity, curiosity, humor, the capacity for reflection. It was uncomfortable, messy, and sometimes humiliating, but it was also liberating. For the first time, he felt alive in a way success and ambition had never offered. Then came the day that changed everything. Michael walked past their old bookstore, the one where Amara had spent hours selecting novels. He stopped, drawn inside by instinct. Rows of books surrounded him, the scent of paper and ink filling his senses. And there she was, Amara, standing near the poetry section. Laughing softly at something the store clerk said, his heart stopped. Part of him wanted to run, to hide from the confrontation he had spent months preparing for. Another part, stronger now, knew he couldn't. He had grown, stumbled, and rebuilt himself in ways he didn't fully understand, but he had to face her, whatever the outcome. Amara looked up. Their eyes met, and 1,000 words hung between them, unspoken. He could see the change in her two strengths: independence, the quiet confidence of someone who had survived a painful separation and emerged whole. Michael swallowed hard. His voice caught, but he forced it out. Amara, I've been trying to understand myself. I know I hurt you. I know I failed. But I needed to find who I am before I could ever deserve you again. Her expression softened slightly, but she didn't move closer. Michael, you've changed. But it's not about deserving. It's about choosing. And I chose to leave because you weren't ready to choose yourself and us. The words stung, but they were honest. Michael nodded, understanding for the first time that love wasn't about grand gestures or apologies. It was about consistency, presence, and truth. As he walked out of the bookstore, Lagos stretching before him in the twilight, he realized something profound. Losing her hadn't just been heartbreak. It had been a mirror, a guide, a test. He wasn't complete yet. He wasn't whole. But for the first time in months, he felt the quiet certainty that he could rebuild, not just for love, but for himself. Asterisk, the city hummed with life outside Michael's apartment window. Lagos never slept. And neither did the questions that circled his mind. He had made progress, small but tangible, in understanding himself and rebuilding connections, yet one shadow lingered, the why of Amara's departure. Not just her leaving, but the quiet, resolute way she had done it, without argument, without drama. He replayed the past in his mind again and again, desperate for some hidden clue, some explanation that would make the heartbreak easier to swallow. And then he remembered Tay's words from weeks ago. Sometimes the truth isn't what you see. It's what you refuse to face. That night, restless, he walked the streets of Victoria Island, seeking the familiar in the chaos. Every corner seemed to whisper her name. The aroma of fried plantains from a nearby vendor caught him off guard, dragging him back to a Sunday morning breakfast she had prepared. Humming softly, teasing him about burning the eggs. The laughter was vivid, almost tangible, but she was not. Michael stopped outside, a small boutique where she had once bought a gift for her younger sister. He hesitated, then entered. The clerk greeted him casually, unaware of the storm inside him. And then in the corner, he saw a letter addressed to him, tucked between books on a display shelf. He picked it up, hands trembling. The handwriting was unmistakable. Amara's, Michael, it began. I can't stay silent any longer. This isn't just about you not seeing Mitts, about you not seeing yourself. You chase achievements while ignoring your heart. You measure love by presence, but never by empathy. And I can't fix a man who won't face his own reflection. Michael's chest tightened. The words weren't accusatory. They were painfully honest. And then came the part that made his stomach drop. I've known something you didn't, something you might never forgive yourself for. Before I left, I found out about the job offer you declined because of your pride. It wasn't just a minor mistake, Michael. It was a chance for us to build a life together, a move that could have changed everything. And you chose ambition over us. His head spun. He remembered the opportunity to transfer to Cape Town, a chance to work on a project he had dreamed about. Amara had wanted to go with him. He had refused, stubborn and prideful, convincing himself that Lagos was where he belonged and work was more important. He had assumed she would understand, that love would wait. She hadn't. Tears stung his eyes. Every misstep, every tiny act of neglect, every moment of arrogance had accumulated into this moment. The realization was brutal. Losing her wasn't random. It was inevitable, the result of choices he had ignored in the name of ego. He sank onto a nearby bench, let her clutch to his chest. The city moved around him, oblivious, indifferent, yet he felt exposed, stripped bare of all pretenses. For the first time, he understood that love was not a prize to be won, but a shared responsibility. And he had failed. The night deepened, and with it came a strange clarity. If he wanted to reclaim anything, whether Amara, trust. or even his own self-respect. He had to confront every flaw, every fear, every misstep. And he had to do it not for her, but for himself. In that moment, he made a vow. Quiet but unbreakable. I will face every uncomfortable truth. I will rebuild every broken part of myself. I will not run from failure, shame, or regret. And if I am ever worthy, she will see the man I've become. The revelation hung over him like a storm cloud. But for the first time, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like a guide, a compass pointing him toward a path he had ignored for years. He realized that heartbreak, no matter how painful, could be a teacher. That loss, no matter how devastating, could be a mirror reflecting truths he had refused to see. As Michael walked home, the city lights glittering like scattered jewels on wet asphalt, he felt the beginnings of transformation. It wasn't a sudden magical change. It was gradual, painful, but it was real. And he understood that some truths, no matter how harsh, were necessary for growth. By the time he reached his apartment, Lagos was quiet, the distant hum of traffic fading. He sat by the window, watching the reflection of himself in the glass. The man staring back was flawed, broken, and vulnerable. But he was awake, and for the first time, he felt the stirring of hope. The flicker of redemption and the quiet certainty that losing her had been the catalyst he needed to finally find himself. The first rays of dawn cut through the Lagos skyline, scattering light across high-rise buildings and glinting off the lagoon. Michael woke with a weight in his chest, a mixture of dread, hope, and determination. The letter, Amara's words, still burned in his mind. He knew that if he didn't act, the months of self-discovery, of confronting his flaws, would be meaningless. He stepped onto the balcony, feeling the city's pulse beneath his feet. Life moved forward, vivid, relentless, alive, but for once he felt synchronized with it. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding behind ambition, distractions, or excuses. He was facing the man he had become and the man he wanted to be. Michael's first act of redemption was tangible. He visited his mother, Mrs. Adewell, whom he had not called in weeks, caught up in work and guilt. She greeted him with her usual warmth, but Michael noticed the strain in her eyes, years of worry he had ignored. He embraced her tightly. "Mom, I've been blind." "I've been so blind," he whispered, tears threatening. Her eyes softened. "It's okay, Michael. Just don't forget yourself again." That day, he also visited the Lagos orphanage, where he and Amara had once volunteered. The children ran toward him, smiles lighting their faces, and he laughed freely for the first time in months. In their innocent energy, he glimpsed the kindness he had buried beneath pride, ambition, and distraction. Yet despite these moments, the ache for Amara remained. He replayed every memory, the quiet mornings with coffee, the sound of her laughter spilling across the apartment, the way she had looked at him when he stumbled or faltered. He realized that redemption wasn't just about good deeds, it was about confronting the truths that had driven her away. Determined. Michael began journaling daily, cataloging his mistakes, reflections, and small victories. Each entry was a mirror, showing him the man he had been, the man he was becoming, and the man he still needed to be. He reflected on trust, loyalty, and love, not as abstract ideals, but as daily choices. Actions that required humility and consistency. Then came the pivotal evening. Michael received a call from Tay. "Meet me at the rooftop garden. You need to see this." Curiosity and apprehension tangled inside him. When he arrived, he found Tay grinning, holding a stack of letters and a journal. "These are yours," Tay said, handing them over. "Things you wrote months ago. Things you didn't send, didn't speak aloud, didn't face yourself with. I thought you should read them now." Michael flipped through the pages, letters to Amara he had never sent, confessions of pride, fear, and love, written in long, messy sentences. Reading them was excruciating. The vulnerability, the raw honesty, it was all there. But instead of shame, he felt clarity. He understood the depth of his mistakes, the cost of ignoring her, the price of neglecting himself. He realized that redemption wasn't a single act. It was a continuous journey. It wasn't about begging for forgiveness or recreating the past. It was about growth, change, and integrity. And for the first time, he felt the courage to embrace that journey fully, knowing that the future, whether it included Amara or not, depended on it. As Lagos glittered beneath the stars, Michael reflected on how far he had come. The city, once a backdrop to his ambition, now mirrored his internal transformation, chaotic yet beautiful, relentless yet forgiving, full of lessons hidden in plain sight. That night, he wrote a final entry in his journal. I lost her. I lost myself. But in losing, I began to find the man I was meant to be. I cannot undo the past, but I can live honestly in the present. And maybe, just maybe, she'll see the change, not because I demand it, but because I've finally become the man I promised myself I could be. The next morning, Michael walked the familiar streets of Lagos with a quiet confidence. Each interaction, each small kindness, felt intentional. He was no longer the man who had ignored love for ambition. He was awake, aware, accountable. And though the ache for Amara remained, it had transformed. It was no longer purely regret. It was hope. Because hope, he realized, wasn't the naive expectation of winning someone back. It was the belief that even after losing the one who mattered most, he could still find himself, and that was the most powerful victory of all. Asterisk, the first light of dawn broke over Lagos, spilling gold across the high-rises and the lagoon. Michael stood at the edge of the bridge they had walked countless times together. The same bridge where, months ago, he had realized how much he had lost. The city was awake of vendors, shouting, traffic roaring, children laughing, but he felt a profound calm. This morning wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It wasn't about grand gestures, apologies, or chasing what he had lost. It was about showing up fully present, fully aware, fully himself. Michael's heart raced as he spotted a familiar figure walking toward him. Amara. She was dressed simply, a scarf draped loosely over her shoulders, her eyes scanning the bridge until they landed on him. There was no hesitation in her steps, only quiet confidence, the same strength that had both terrified and inspired him the day she left. He swallowed hard, the words he had rehearsed over months dissolving. Amara, he said, voice catching. She nodded, her expression unreadable but soft. Michael, she replied. For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the city seemed distant, the chaos fading into background hum. The months of heartbreak, the nights of reflection, the failures. The small victories, all of it converged into this fragile moment. Michael took a deep breath. I've spent months trying to find myself. And in losing you, I realized the truth I was too proud to see. I ignored you, yes, but I ignored myself even more. I've changed not just for us, but for me. I've learned what love really means. Presence, respect, patience, and honesty. Amara's eyes glimmered with emotion. I've seen glimpses of it, Michael. And I see the effort, the change. But it's not about words. It's about actions. Every single day. He nodded. I understand. And I'm ready to prove it. Not for anyone else. Not to fix the past, but because it's the right way to live. To love, to be. A breeze swept over the bridge, carrying the scent of grilled suya from a street stall nearby and the faint aroma of the lagoon. Michael felt the world alive around him, vibrant and unforgiving. And yet somehow forgiving him too. Amara stepped closer, closing the distance that had felt insurmountable for months. I left because I loved you enough to let you go. I hoped you would find yourself in the process, she said softly. I did, he whispered. I'm still learning, still growing. But I've never been more certain of who I am, more of the love I feel for you. For the first time since their separation, a smile passed between them, tentative but real. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. It wasn't perfect. But it was human, honest, and deeply earned. They walked together across the bridge, the city stretching endlessly around them, life pulsating with noise and color. Every step felt like reclamation. Every shared glance, a fragile promise of understanding and patience. Michael reflected silently. Losing Amara hadn't just broken his heart, it had forced him to confront every flaw, every fear, and every moment he had taken for granted. And through that journey, he had discovered a truth far more valuable than reconciliation: the power to face himself honestly, to grow, and to love without ego. By the time they reached the far side of the bridge, the sun was high, glinting off the water and casting long, golden reflections. Michael turned to Amara, taking her hand in his, not as a plea, not as a demand, but as a shared commitment. "We don't have to rush anything," he said. "I just want us to move forward together, consciously, fully aware of what matters." Amara squeezed his hand gently. "That's all I've ever wanted, Michael. To know we're present, alive, choosing each other every day." The city roared around them, but they moved in a quiet bubble of understanding. Months of loss, reflection, and personal growth had distilled into this simple truth: love, when nurtured with honesty and self-awareness, could survive even the harshest trials. Michael realized then that finding Amara again wasn't the culmination of his journey, it was the beginning. He had discovered the courage to face himself, the humility to acknowledge his mistakes, and the strength to rebuild life on foundations of honesty and empathy. That, more than anything, was the gift of losing her. As they walked through the bustling streets, sharing small jokes and memories, Michael's heart was light for the first time in months. Lagos, with all its chaos and vibrancy, mirrored his transformation, relentless, alive, and full of possibilities. He whispered under his breath, more to himself than to Amara, "I found myself. I found her. And now we can both move forward stronger, wiser, and truly present." The city thrummed with life, but Michael finally felt still. He had lost, he had suffered, he had grown in that growth. He had discovered the most valuable truth of all: sometimes losing the one you love is exactly what forces you to find yourself.